Now I am honored to invite Israel's National Security Advisor, the head of the National Security Council, Mr. Tzachi Hanegbi, for a one-on-one interview with Almaz Mangisto, reporter and anchor at Channel 12 News. The head of the National Security Council, the NSC, thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Almaz. Thank you, everyone. There are so many security challenges that Israel is experiencing, but I'd like to begin with the most significant, even existential security challenge, an existential challenge on Israel, and that's the Iranian nuclear capability. I'd like to open with a significant report in AP that says that they're building a new nuclear facility underground at Natanz, which can resist any bomb. And I'd like to ask you if there is such a facility in Natanz, and there are also images, satellite images, is that closing Israel's window of opportunity to attack in Iran, to strike in Iran? Well, first of all, of course, it's not surprising and it's not new. We are familiar with the Iranian approach to try and build facilities underground in order to make them immune to any strikes, resistant to any strike. And it started in the tunnels in Isfahan and then Qom, which is Fordo, and now we're talking about this site which has also been discovered next to Natanz. Of course, this limits the striking capability. In comparison, striking facilities above ground is much easier, obviously, but what I can say about this is that there is no place that cannot be reached in a strike like the one you've describing. So you're saying even 100 meters beneath the ground, Israel can reach that place without the Americans. Look, I don't want to say if it's Israel or somebody else, and you know what Moab is the mother of all bombs, and these are bombs developed by the Americans many years ago, and they are known in the jargon as bunker penetrating bombs, and we hope not reaching even a situation to a solution for the nuclear weapons in Iran is a kinetic solution, a strike, and if we can reach that through an agreement. We've seen other countries in the world that stop their nuclear programs following agreements, pressures, sanctions, and their assessment that it's just not worth their while. So we are also preparing for a situation in which there will be no other alternative but a conflict, and we hope that the Americans and the whole world that set this issue as a main thwarting effort, hopefully we won't need to reach that. Look, in 2012, we all remember Netanyahu with the drawing, the illustration of the bomb that wrote that red line, which was 90% enriched uranium, and 5 years after the Americans unilaterally pulled out of the JCPOA, according to all accounts, it has reached fissile uranium capabilities. Number 5 in the Pentagon says that it has enough fissile material for one nuclear bomb. And I'd like to ask you, did we waste precious when we didn't present an alternative program, whether a diplomatic agreement or a striking program, in order to deal with this threat, which is the Iranian nuclear capability? And the short answer is no, we did not waste time. And the longer answer, it's not long, but it's succinct, that actually Israel, not on its own, but in certain situations it was on its own, and sometimes with the whole world, Israel is successfully engaged in delaying the Iranian nuclear program in more than 20 years. When I was Minister of Justice back in '96, and then the Prime Minister went to the Congress to speak, that was a generation ago, And he spoke about the fact that the main thing which is threatening both world peace and regional stability and Israel is an Iranian nuclear problem. So these years were utilized, and still the Iranians did not rest on their laurels. And as much as they were delayed, still they did manage to make progress. And fortunately, they still haven't reached the 90% enrichment level, which is sufficient for weapons. It's arms grade. And they're saying that they've reached between 60 to 90, and it's now 84. And any expert know that you can reach a level of 90% if you're already at 60 overnight. Look, they are not producing a 90% enriched uranium. They stopped at 60%. There was one deviation towards 83. So you're saying that the Pentagon's report is incorrect. Hold on. Just give me 2 minutes and everything will be made very clear. So this process of theirs to advance towards weapons-grade enrichment places them in a very problematic situation, because all these years they've claimed that they do not want military nuclear capabilities, but civilian. But when you enrich over 60%, it's like hoisting this great sign, I'm developing a bomb. And developing a bomb, in contrast to all international assessments, that bears a cost with it. They're not willing to pay that price. And the Pentagon, not only the Pentagon, they're right when they say that with respect to uranium enrichment, they want to move from 60% to 90%. It's a 3-week process. Some people assess that it's even less. The Americans said that it can be a day, but it still doesn't mean that you have nuclear weapons. It just places you in a situation that you have enriched uranium that's sufficient for a bomb, and still you need to undergo a process of creating a nuclear facility, and they're not there yet. And for us, of course, it's not just a red flag, it's a flag that says if we don't take action, now we're actually coming to terms with nuclear weapons, a nuclear mass destruction weapon, and of course we won't come to terms with that. Before you assumed your position, you said in the Channel 12 Friday night news, you assessed that we will attack Iran in this term of office because there is no choice. No, I said what I just said now, that we wouldn't want to reach a situation that we're facing this dilemma. But if there is no other alternative, if the U.S., according to its declared statement of 6 presidents, will allow Iran reach the point of no return, we and Netanyahu, if it's on his shift, I'm convinced of that, will not allow the Iranians to make progress without any Israeli action. So what's the red line? When we just saw the report this morning about Natanz, about an underground nuclear facility, we saw that they're nearing 90%. So when is the red line? Look, first of all, the facility that was mentioned, it'll take years until it's completed and until any kind of activity of the kind we're talking about can happen there. And we don't like explicitly specifying, but we are saying with certainty that if we get the impression that there is no way to avoid military activity, military strike on nuclear facilities in Iran, I think any government will have full backing from the State of Israel, from the people of Israel, to do what Begin did in '81 and what Almaz did in 2007, to act when all other options are no longer effective. Is that day coming soon, sir? Because it doesn't seem like there's going to be a new agreement anytime soon. Look, the agreement as it was, at least my approach was and still is, it still stands, that this agreement was actually intended in order to legitimize an Iranian nuclear program. And had we come to terms with it, had we accepted it, then we would have found ourselves in 2030 or even before that, that there is immunity to the Iranian nuclear program because it's been legitimized by the world. But they reached the Iranian enrichment capabilities over 5 years between 60 to 90%. But the existence of an Iranian enrichment program is still not enough for obtaining nuclear weapons. But they have made progress in their enrichment program. That's a fact. Let me just answer your previous question. They are near, they're close to it. It's a matter of whether or not they decide to go for it. And what we're conveying to them, we're not the only ones, what the Americans are also conveying, if you cross the red line, the price that you'll pay as a regime, as a country, is not a price that you'll want to pay. What's the red line? The red line is once we are convinced that Iran is nearing the point of no return. So you're saying that we're waiting for the Iranians' decision. It's their decision. It's a matter of 12 days, like they said in the Pentagon, to reach the capability of one bomb. Look, I said to you, I explained, Almaz, 12 days, that will give them enriched uranium, but not a bomb, because they still don't have an explosive facility. But with respect to the enrichment, we do determine a certain point, and after that point, we'll have to do what we have to do. And that's true, by the way, for any nuclear weapons. And, with respect to Syria, we did not act according to our desire. We acted because we've reached the conclusion that if we don't act in September 2007 against the facility at Deir Azor, then we lose our way. And also the same in Iraq in 1981. Begin really did not want to reach that option, but when all other options weren't made possible, and the then president of France didn't prevent what we had asked him to prevent, then came that point of no return, that if you don't take action at that moment, you're actually coming to terms with a nuclear program in the hands of a zealous enemy. I'd like to ask you, did the Americans present some kind of a joint program for a strike in Iran? I can say this. Look, I can assume that you know that there are questions that you need to ask, but I can't always answer. Thank you. Let me just say, I've been involved in the relationship with the U.S. since I've entered the office of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, since the days of Yitzhak Shamir. So next year it'll be the 40th anniversary. So from this position, from this perspective, the intel security operational connection between us and the Americans has never, and I'll emphasize this again, I'll repeat this for the sake of drama, has never been so close. And for me, as somebody who's in charge of the NSC, it's never been so satisfactory or fulfilling. And of course, we and the Americans see eye to eye the Iranian threat. The only place where there is a difference between us and the U.S., they still believe that the right way to postpone this threat is through diplomacy. They still think so, even though the JCPOA, the overall agreement signed in 2015, is not that relevant right now, but they still think that that's the best way. And of course, we respect this approach, but with respect to other options, to other ways, which you asked about, there's very close collaboration, which is increasing with every day that passes. You said that for us, the red line is different than the red line for the Americans. If, D-Day comes, can Israel strike nuclear facilities without the Americans? I didn't say that the way we see the red line and the way the Americans see it is different. I think it's the same. I'm just saying that they wish to postpone reaching that red line in diplomatic means, but we're skeptical regarding the Iranian willingness to pay the heavy price that they're being asked to pay in the diplomatic context, because the Americans already understood that the JCPO is problematic, and this is why they want a different agreement, which they call longer and stronger, for the longer term and with more effective impacts. But it doesn't seem that this is the change of American attitude is leaving any impression on the Iranians. But I think that the one thing that we Israelis have to say is that we do have the ability, and when the time comes, if we are forced to use it, we will use that ability. And beyond that, we shouldn't say anything. Look, if you ask any expert, the expert will tell you that an attack in Iran is not just operationally, but it's also strategic, and we need the Americans to be included, and you cannot do such an attack without regional American coordination. Look, I know a lot of experts, and there are opinions that go both ways. Obviously, an American strike along with Israeli assistance, they have the effect of a superpower, but we cannot rely only on the U.S. or any other friend, because sometimes their analysis of the interests is not identical to our analysis. The U.S., for example, is threatened by about 1,000 nuclear missiles from China and from Russia. And this is why if there are 5 or 20 missiles in Iran, it doesn't bother them that much. But for Israel, the fact that a fundamentalist religious regime that swore to destroy Israel, when it has nuclear weapons, it's a different, we perceive it differently. So therefore, the action required to get rid of that threat is different. We would love for the American approach to be similar to ours, but we're doing what all American presidents have said, including the current president through his advisor just a few days ago. Israel has complete freedom of action, and it knows how to act. And Jack Sullivan said, we, the Americans, respect Israel's freedom of action. We don't have a lot of time left, and I want to cover many other subjects. You talked about the excellent and intimate collaboration between the IDF and the U.S., between Israel and the U.S. It's not just the IDF, it's in all planes. But you said that if it weren't for the reform, Netanyahu would have been invited to the White House. We know that the critical regional strategic decisions are reached at the highest level. The fact that Netanyahu hasn't been invited yet and he hasn't met Biden in the Oval Office, does that somehow harm strategically and security-wise as we, with respect to the ability to strike in Iran, or as we, and for the option of a multi-theater war? Look, I'm talking about the security level. It could be the reform or the protests and the rift amongst us. Look, the Prime Minister is in contact with President Biden and with all the American relevant ministers, and they've all visited Israel. Has he spoken with Biden? Yes, he has several times since he was elected, and I speak with Jack Sullivan, the American National Security Advisor, regularly. We meet both here and in Washington, and of course the top military commanders are in close contact with top military American echelon. Our Minister of Defense has met with the American Secretary of Defense. The collaboration, everybody can be pleased with the level of our relationship. You're saying when D-Day comes, the Americans are with us. Yes, they're with us. They've been with us for decades. We can definitely trust them, rely on them. It's our strongest friend. You can't even understand how much they are supportive of Israel's existence. This issue, the nuclear issue, I think that we've talked about it, and the answer is that we know how to act if we need to, in any way that we need to. And I'd like to quote what the Minister of Defense said yesterday in the conference: only international collaboration in creating a coalition against terrorism spread from Iran, alongside posing a military threat in the theater, contending with Iranian terrorism. And we see that they've built a new Middle East, a relationship with Saudi Arabia, the Russia-China axis. How do you see their attempt to build a new Middle East here? Look, they are in great distress, the Iranians, because all these tremendous efforts that they're investing endless energies and resources in do not manage to obtain not even one of their goals. And of course, their purpose is to pester us and exhaust us. And this is why they have these proxies, Islamic Jihad and Hezbollah. But ultimately, we know that their impact on us is such that it forces us to exert efforts every once in a while, but it doesn't harm our success and the great measures Israel has enacted for decades. And this, I'll give you one small example, anecdotal. Syria. Iran, 8 or 9 years ago, decided to build the Hezbollah Model 2.0 in Syria. They understood that Hezbollah was a good model, and they wanted to build something similar in Syria. They said out in the open, we'll bring 80,000 Shiite combatants. They don't like when Iranian soldiers die, so they send the Chechens, the Pakistanis, the Iraqis, Shiites from all over the world, and they will threaten Israel from the Golan Heights. Ever since all Israeli governments, it was mainly Netanyahu who was prime minister, but also Bennett and Lapid, they had acted to thwart this Iranian attempts, and they failed. They did not manage to pose a serious and credible threat from Syria. Have they given up? No. Do they have the patience to try and keep at it for 10 more years? Yes, this is what characterizes the Iranians. They're constantly looking for ways because they have this belief, it's mistaken, that we will grow tired, but we will never grow tired of defending ourselves. Okay, I'd like to cover a few more topics, please. Minister of Defense Eli Cohen, we only have 14 seconds left. Minister Eli Cohen said that within 6 to 12 months we'll have normalization relationship with Saudi Arabia, and we know that there's mediation with Bahrain, and there was also a conversation between the Prime Minister and the Saudi heir to throne. When we'll reach Riyadh? Look, none of these things happened. I saw the news items. There wasn't any Bahrainian mediation. There wasn't any conversation between the Prime Minister and MBS in recent months, and Eli Cohen didn't say that we will have. No, Eli Cohen said that at Meet the Press, that he hopes and believes. So what can you say about that? Look, I can say that the policy led by the Prime Minister for many years now, but especially in recent months, is that there is one huge vision that will change the entire Middle East and will lead to peace between us and the entire Arab world, perhaps with the Palestinians as well. Sir, the agreement with Saudi Arabia, when do you think it'll happen, if it'll happen? Well, I cannot estimate. All I can say is that we want to fulfill the vision of the Abraham Accords with Saudi Arabia. This vision could never have happened without Saudi Arabia because it gave the Emirates as well as Bahrain a green light. Is it going to happen? There's one sentence I'd like to say to the person cutting us both short. There is a leader in Saudi Arabia, and I guess there's never been someone like him in the world ever. Somebody who took his country and shifted it 180 degrees in a totally different direction than it was in the past. A bold, revolutionary leader with his own issues, just like any other leader. If he thinks that they can reach normalization with Israel, then it will happen. I believe that there is a chance that it will happen. Head of the National Security Council, the NSC, thank you very much, sir.